In 2013, a 20-year-old college student named Emily had just started her sophomore year in Portland, Oregon. Like most students, she was on a tight budget. After weeks of searching, she finally found an apartment that she could actually afford. It wasn't much. A small one-bedroom on the ground floor of a creaky, decades-old building. The rent was suspiciously cheap compared to the rest of the area, but the place was close to campus, and Emily didn't feel like she could be picky. When she first met the landlord, an older woman in her 60s, there was something strange about the way she looked at Emily. As Emily signed the lease, the landlord said almost casually, "Most tenants don't last long here." Emily laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. She asked why. The woman shrugged and simply said, "Strange noises. Some people get spooked." Then she handed over the keys and left. For the first few nights, everything seemed fine. The place was old, sure, and every pipe and floorboard groaned. But Emily didn't mind. She was young, busy, and exhausted most of the time. But then, the nights began to feel different. It started subtly. Around 2 a.m., she would wake up to a faint sound, like something moving in the kitchen. At first, she brushed it off. Old houses make noises. But as the days went on, the sounds grew clearer. One night, she woke to what sounded exactly like the creak of cabinet doors being opened and shut. Slowly, repeatedly. Her stomach dropped. She froze in bed, listening, heart pounding. After a minute, she convinced herself it must just be a neighbor, maybe through the thin walls. But something about the sound, it was too close. It was coming from her kitchen. Summoning her courage, Emily grabbed her phone, using its flashlight, and crept toward the kitchen. When she stepped inside, her blood ran cold. Every single cabinet door was wide open. All of them. And on the floor, right in the middle of the kitchen tiles, lay a knife. Not just any knife. Her own kitchen knife, one she'd left in the drawer. Her hands shook as she dialed the landlord, whispering frantically what had happened. She expected panic, or at least some reassurance. But the landlord's voice on the other end was calm, almost too calm. "You're not the first. Years ago, a man took his own life in that apartment. Right there, in the kitchen. Since then, people say he still walks around at night." Emily's knees went weak. She asked why she hadn't been told before. The landlord only sighed and said, "I don't like to scare people off. But you'll see, no one stays very long, that was it." Emily didn't wait until morning. She packed what she could into a backpack, grabbed her laptop and wallet, and left the apartment at 3 a.m., never looking back. The next day, when she returned with a friend to collect the rest of her belongings, something unsettled her even more. The cabinets in the kitchen were closed. The knife was gone. Neither she nor her friend ever spoke much about what happened. But Emily swears to this day that when she walked into that kitchen the night before, she wasn't alone. And that apartment? It's still listed for rent, still cheap, and still waiting. In 2017, a 28-year-old man named Mark lived in Chicago. He had a simple routine: work, late shift, then home. He usually walked because it was only a few blocks, but this time something felt different. It was past midnight. The city was quiet, unusually quiet. No cars, no people. The only sound came from the flickering, buzzing streetlights above. Mark pulled his jacket tighter around him as he walked. That's when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. The number was unknown. At first, he thought to ignore it, but the silence of the street made the sound of the ringtone unbearable. He swiped to answer, and what he heard made his skin crawl. It was his own voice, clear, identical. The voice said, "Don't go home. Don't open that door. If you do, you'll die." Mark froze in the middle of the empty street. He stammered into the phone, "Who is this?" But there was no reply, just his own breathing, echoing back to him. Then the line went dead. His hands shook as he shoved the phone into his pocket. He tried to laugh it off. Maybe it was a recording, a prank. Maybe one of his friends was messing with him. But as he approached his apartment building, the unease grew heavier. The hallway lights flickered as he climbed the stairs. His own footsteps echoed unnaturally loud. When he turned the corner, his heart stopped. Right in front of his apartment door lay his neighbor, collapsed on the floor. Blood pooled around him. He had been stabbed multiple times, fresh enough that it had happened only minutes before. Mark called 911, his voice shaking, and waited until the police arrived. Later, the officers told him that based on the wounds and body temperature, the neighbor had likely been killed at the exact time Mark received that phone call. But here's the most disturbing part. When investigators checked the call logs, there was no record of that number. No call had ever been made to his phone. Mark never moved back into that building. He transferred to another neighborhood within the month, but he still keeps the screenshot of that unknown call. A reminder of the night he was warned by himself. In 2009, the Miller family moved into an old countryside home in Pennsylvania. It was large, affordable, and came with a basement that stretched underneath the entire house. When they first arrived, a neighbor stopped by to welcome them. But before leaving, he offered a strange warning. At night, keep the basement door closed. Trust me. The Millers laughed. They didn't believe in superstitions. For the first week, the house felt cozy. But soon, strange things started happening. At night, the family would hear heavy footsteps coming from below. Not the scurrying of animals, but slow, deliberate, human-like steps. Mr. Miller assumed it was an old foundation or pipes creaking. To prove his point, he set up a small camera at the top of the basement stairs. The next morning, he reviewed the footage. What he saw made his blood run cold. Standing at the bottom of the stairs were several shadowy figures, dark, faceless, and still. They didn't move. They didn't breathe. They only stared up into the camera, as if they knew they were being watched. That night, the sounds grew louder. This time, the footsteps began climbing the stairs. Each step was slow, heavy, and deliberate. The family locked themselves in the bedroom as the sounds stopped just outside their door. They huddled together, praying for silence. When daylight finally came, they checked the door. Deep, jagged scratch marks covered the wood, high up, far too long and too deep for any animal to have made. Within weeks, the Millers packed their belongings and fled. The house went back on the market, and the new owners didn't last long either. Locals say the basement still hasn't been touched, and when the wind is just right, some claim they can hear footsteps echoing from beneath the ground.